The sun rose over Lagos like a golden promise, spilling light over the chaotic streets where market women set up their stalls. Hawkers shouted prices for yams and tomatoes, and the smell of roasted plantain mingled with exhaust fumes. Among them was Zainab, a young woman of 23, with eyes that had seen more hardship than most could bear. Her fingers, calloused from years of peeling, washing, and selling in the busy market, moved deftly as she arranged ripe mangoes into neat pyramids on her wooden stall. Zainab had grown up in a small village in Ogun State, the youngest of 5 siblings. Her father had died when she was 9, leaving her mother to fend for the family with meager earnings from a tiny farm. From a young age, Zainab learned the language of survival. She could bargain better than any man, knew which customers were generous and which ones stingy, and carried herself with a dignity that often made older women in the market smile in quiet approval. Life had been hard, but Zainab held on to a dream bigger than the small concrete room she rented above the stall. She dreamed of leaving the cramped alleys, of seeing a life where the ceiling wasn't leaking during the rainy season, where she could wear shoes that didn't hurt her feet after half a day, where her mother could rest instead of working herself to exhaustion. One humid afternoon, while she was arranging oranges, a sleek black car pulled up near the market. Zainab, used to cars honking and skidding on the uneven street, didn't pay much attention until the driver opened the door and out stepped a man who seemed too polished, too confident for these dusty streets. He was tall, in a tailored suit that whispered of wealth, with a clean-shaven face and eyes that moved like they could see more than just the surface. He approached her stall with a calm smile. "Good afternoon, young lady. How much for the mangoes?" Zainab looked up, brushing a bead of sweat from her forehead. 500 naira for a bunch, sir." He nodded and bought 2, handing her a crisp note that made her heart beat a little faster. But it wasn't the money. It was the way he looked at her, a look that made her feel seen for the first time in a long while. "I'm Ahmed," he said, introducing himself. "I come here sometimes, but I don't often get the pleasure of meeting the people who make this market come alive." Zainab hesitated. "Zainab?" Ahmed smiled. "Zainab, nice name. It suits you." She felt her cheeks warm, but she smiled politely and focused on arranging the fruit. She had learned early that men like him, wealthy, well-dressed city men, rarely lingered with market girls. Most saw her as a curiosity, an exotic moment before they returned to air-conditioned offices and important meetings. Yet, over the coming weeks, Ahmed became a familiar presence. Sometimes he stopped to buy fruit. Other times he simply passed through the market, exchanging a few words with Zainab. Each time, she noticed the small details. The way he remembered her mother's name, the way he laughed at Ayadil, the street boy who ran errands for her, and the way he seemed genuinely interested in her dreams, however modest they were. Zainab's friends warned her, "Don't get involved with men like that," they said, smoothing their wrappers and shaking their heads. "They come, they charm, they leave." But Zainab found herself drawn to him, not just his wealth or status, though she couldn't deny their allure, but the fact that he treated her as a person, not just a market girl, not just a seller of fruits. One evening, after the market had closed and Zainab was counting her day's earnings, Ahmed appeared at her stall again. He had a small gift, a box of chocolates, wrapped in shiny paper. "For you," he said simply. Zainab laughed softly, nervous, unsure what to say. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he replied. His eyes held a gravity she hadn't expected. "Zainab, there's something about you, something that makes me want to be around you. Not just because you sell the best mangoes, but because you have a heart, a strength, a light I don't see anywhere else." Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the box. "Ahmed, She stopped herself, afraid of her own words. He took a step closer. "Zainab, may I?" Before she could answer, he leaned in and kissed her gently on the lips. It was brief, delicate, yet it sent a surge of emotion through her that she had never felt. Her heart raced, her breath caught, and in that single moment, she felt the world shift beneath her feet. That kiss changed everything. Overnight, her thoughts were consumed by him. His smile, his words, the way he seemed to understand her struggles without judgment. And she began to imagine a future she had never dared to dream of. One with comfort, security, and perhaps even love. Yet life in Lagos was not a fairy tale. Zainab continued to sell fruit during the day, while Ahmed balanced his corporate world with the attention he lavished on her in stolen afternoons. There were whispers in the market. Women wondered why she smiled so often, why the city man lingered by her stall, but Zainab brushed them aside. She had always been accustomed to gossip. One day, as she packed her unsold mangoes, a voice called out sharply, "Zainab, come quickly." It was Mama Yatund, an older woman who sold yam porridge nearby. She handed Zainab a letter, the seal unfamiliar. Curious, Zainab opened it to find a formal invitation. Ahmed had arranged a meeting at his family home. It was to discuss something serious. He wrote. Her pulse quickened. What could this mean? Marriage? A job? A proposal? The house was massive, with polished marble floors and intricately carved doors. It smelled of fresh flowers and faint perfume. Ahmed greeted her at the entrance, taking her hand with the same gentle warmth that had drawn her in from the start. "Zainab," he said, leading her into a spacious living room, "I want you to know why I called you here. You are not just a girl selling mangoes to me. You are intelligent, strong, and capable. I want to invest in your future. I want to help you learn, grow, and maybe one day run your own business." Zainab's eyes widened. "Ahmed, I don't know what to say. I've never had someone offer this to me before." He smiled, sincerity in every line of his face. "Say yes, Zainab. Trust me. Take a chance. Learn from me. Let me show you the possibilities beyond this market." Her heart thumped. It wasn't just a promise of wealth. It was a validation, the recognition of her worth that she had longed for. She nodded slowly. I'll try." And so began her transformation. Ahmed taught her the basics of finance, negotiation, and presentation. Zainab learned quickly, absorbing lessons like a sponge, her mind alight with possibilities. Meanwhile, the market that had been her world now felt smaller, almost like a memory of a life she was leaving behind. Yet even as her skills grew, there were challenges. Some in Ahmed's circle didn't trust her, seeing her as a naive girl from the streets. Others whispered that she was only after his money. Zainab faced it all with quiet dignity. She reminded herself daily of why she was there, not for the wealth alone, but for the opportunity to change her life, to honor her mother, and to prove to the world and herself that she was capable. And in the quiet moments, Ahmed's gaze still found her, and she remembered that first kiss, the one that had sparked everything. It was a promise, a moment frozen in time that neither of them could deny, and it held the power to change not just her circumstances, but her very destiny. The weeks turned into months, and Zainab's life slowly began to shift from the dusty market stalls to the polished floors of Ahmed's world. Each morning, she woke before the sun, reviewing notes and plans Ahmed had left for her, practicing calculations, and rehearsing how to speak confidently about business. The lessons were not easy. At first, she stumbled over words, her fingers shaking as she wrote figures into ledgers, her eyes growing tired from reading contracts filled with terms she had never known. But Zainab had something many people lacked: determination. Every obstacle became a stepping stone, every mistake a lesson. Ahmed watched her progress with quiet pride. He never rushed her, never belittled her, and never expected perfection. Instead, he offered guidance, encouragement, and trust, the kind that made a person feel capable of anything. Slowly, Zainab began managing small projects on her own. She negotiated with suppliers, planned stock distribution, and even made decisions about hiring helpers. Each success fueled her confidence, and each day, she felt more like the person she had always dreamed of becoming. Yet, the outside world remained a challenge. Some of Ahmed's associates whispered behind her back. "She's just a street girl," they said. "What does she know about running a business?" The comments stung, but Zainab refused to let them define her. She learned quickly that in the city, people respect the results more than excuses. If she succeeded, the whispers would fade. If she failed, the market girl's stigma would be eternal. One afternoon, as she was reviewing accounts, Ahmed returned unexpectedly, carrying a small bouquet of flowers. "For you," he said with a shy smile. Zainab blinked, her fingers still on the ledger. "Ahmed, you didn't have to." He shrugged. "I know, but I wanted to. You've been working so hard. I thought a little gesture might remind you to breathe, to enjoy life too." For a moment, the pressures of the past months melted away. The long hours, the self-doubt, and the fears of being judged, all of it vanished in the warmth of his smile. Zainab felt a familiar flutter in her chest, the echo of that first kiss, the silent promise it had created. Their relationship, though unspoken, grew stronger. They spent evenings walking along the Lagos Marina, talking about dreams, family, and possibilities. Ahmed shared stories of his childhood, the struggles of his parents, and his own fears of failure. Zainab shared hers too, the poverty of her village, the death of her father, the long hours in the market. They connected on a level neither had anticipated, and the bond between them deepened with every shared story, every quiet moment. As Zainab's skills improved, Ahmed began introducing her to higher-level business meetings. She found herself sitting in air-conditioned conference rooms, negotiating contracts with suppliers and investors who had no idea that a year ago she had been selling fruit on a hot, dusty street. Some were skeptical at first, unconsciously underestimating her because of her humble background. But her knowledge, poise, and intelligence silenced doubts quickly. People began to notice her. She wasn't just Ahmed's protege. She was Zainab, a force in her own right. But not all news was positive. One morning, as she walked into the office, she overheard two women whispering. "Did you hear about Zainab?" One said. "She's moving up fast, but she's still a market girl at heart." The word stung. Zainab paused, taking a deep breath. She knew this life would bring envy and gossip, but instead of letting it break her, she used it as fuel. If they doubted her, she would prove them wrong. If they mocked her past, she would show them a future they could never imagine. Months later, Ahmed surprised her again. This time, it wasn't flowers or gifts. It was a small meeting with a potential investor who wanted to back her own venture. The investor, a wealthy woman from Abuja, was impressed by Zainab's vision. She saw not just a young woman who would learn quickly, but someone who could understand the market, identify gaps, and manage operations with precision. Zainab's project received funding, and soon she was managing her own store within Ahmed's chain, with staff reporting directly to her. The shop was modern, clean, and organized, a far cry from her market stall, but the lessons she had learned there still guided her. She understood her customers, knew how to negotiate, and remembered the countless hours spent under the scorching sun, which gave her empathy and patience in abundance. However, with success came new pressures. Zainab faced criticism from people who couldn't see beyond her past. Some colleagues in Ahmed's circle tried to undermine her, spreading rumors or questioning her competence. Others envied her close relationship with Ahmed, whispering insinuations about favoritism or impropriety. Each night, as she returned to her small apartment, Zainab would reflect on the journey. She realized that success brought its own trials, but she refused to let the negativity consume her. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Zainab received a call from her mother back in Ogun State. "Zainab, my child, I heard about the new shop. I am so proud," her mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You made all of us proud. Your father would have been, oh, my child, he would have been so proud." Tears filled Zainab's eyes. She realized that all the sacrifices, the long hours, the persistence, and the hardships had a purpose. She was no longer just a market girl. She was a woman building a legacy, not just for herself, but for her family. And yet, in the quiet moments, she remembered the first kiss, the moment Ahmed had taken her hand and shown her a world she had never dared to dream of. That single gesture had set off a chain reaction that changed everything. The trajectory of her life, her confidence, and her understanding of what love and opportunity could look like. Months later, her shop thrived. Customers came not just for goods, but to see the woman whose story inspired whispers of hope. Zainab, once confined to the narrow alleys of the Lagos market, now walked the streets with her head held high, her confidence radiating from every movement. She had learned that life could change in a moment, sometimes through a gesture, sometimes through a choice, but always through courage, perseverance, and the willingness to seize the opportunity when it appeared. But even as she climbed, shadows lingered. Envy, betrayal, and unexpected challenges awaited, reminding her that life's climb was never without obstacles. Yet, Zainab's heart remained strong. The market girl within her had never been forgotten. It had been the very foundation of her resilience, a reminder of how far she had come, and the source of strength she would need for TH. Life, as Zainab soon discovered, was never simply a straight path from hardship to triumph. The Lego skyline glimmered with opportunity, but also cast shadows of envy, betrayal, and unexpected challenges. Her store thrived, her reputation grew, and Ahmed's guidance remained steadfast. Yet, the higher she climbed, the more she realized that success attracted not only admirers, but those who would try to pull her down. It started subtly. A few whispers in the office. A delayed shipment here. An unusually rude supplier there. At first, Zainab dismissed it as coincidence. But over time, patterns emerged. Certain investors hesitated. Former friends turned cold. And some employees spread rumors about favoritism, claiming she had secured a position through Ahmed's influence rather than her own intelligence. The familiar pang of self-doubt returned, echoing from her days in the market. One afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. It was Adebayo, a childhood friend who had also moved to Lagos years before. He had known Zainab in Ogun State before she had left the city. Seeing her now, dressed in a crisp blouse and skirt, standing behind her modern counter, he was visibly stunned. "Zainab, is that really you?" he asked, his tone a mixture of disbelief and admiration. She smiled politely. "Yes, Adebayo. It's been a long time. I never imagined you've come so far," he said, glancing around the store. "This is amazing." Zainab felt a warmth in her chest. "It's been hard work, but I've learned a lot." Adebayo leaned closer. "Listen, there's something you should know. Not everyone around Ahmed is honest. Some people are plotting. They think you're here because of him, not because of your talent. You need to be careful." Zainab's heart skipped a beat. "Thank you for telling me. I've noticed some unusual things, but I won't let it stop me." She realized that in the business world, as in life, not everyone wanted her to succeed. Her past, which had once been her strength, could now be used against her by those who underestimated her. And yet, she refused to yield. Meanwhile, Ahmed continued to support her, introducing her to high-profile investors and hosting private mentorship sessions. He admired her resilience, her ability to turn challenges into opportunities. Over late evenings in his office, reviewing contracts or discussing expansion plans, the connection between them deepened. There were stolen moments of laughter, the occasional brush of hands, and glances that spoke volumes. Their relationship, though unspoken publicly, had become a powerful partnership built on trust, admiration, and a quiet promise of love. Then came the betrayal. It was a rainy afternoon, the streets of Lagos slick with water, the sky heavy with clouds. Zainab had been preparing for a meeting with a major investor who could fund her expansion into Abuja. As she arrived at the office, she found a package waiting for her. Inside were confidential documents detailing her finances, plans, and private communications with Ahmed, stolen and leaked. Alongside the papers was a note. "You don't belong here. You're just a street girl playing at wealth. Watch carefully." Her heart sank. The careful control she had built over her life now seemed fragile, threatened by the envy and malice of those around her. But Zainab was not one to crumble under pressure. She remembered the long hours in the sun, the nights counting coins, the endless effort to build something greater than herself. Determined, she began tracing the source of the leak. It took weeks of careful investigation, following trails of suspicious behavior among staff and colleagues, subtle discrepancies in the accounting, and conversations with trusted friends. She discovered that one of Ahmed's trusted associates, jealous of her rapid rise and resentful of Ahmed's attention to her, had orchestrated the leak. Armed with proof, Zainab confronted the culprit. The confrontation was tense. Words were sharp, voices raised, but Zainab remained composed. She presented the evidence calmly, refusing to be intimidated. By the end, the associate had no choice but to admit their scheme. Zainab had not only defended her work, but demonstrated her intelligence, resourcefulness, and strength. The incident, though painful, only reinforced her reputation. Investors admired her poise under pressure. Ahmed was more impressed than ever, and Zainab herself felt a renewed confidence in her ability to navigate both the challenges of business and the complexities of human nature. Amidst the chaos of corporate life, Zainab did not forget her roots. She frequently visited the Lagos markets, offering support to young sellers, teaching them basic business principles and inspiring them with her story. She remembered the faces of those who had doubted her in her youth and knew how transformative a little encouragement and belief could be. As her wealth and influence grew, so did her personal life. Ahmed and Zainab's bond deepened into romance, built on mutual respect and shared ambition. Their evenings became filled with laughter, conversation, and quiet companionship. When he took her to his family's estate in Victoria Island, introducing her as a partner and equal, she felt a mix of pride and validation. She had earned her place, not just through her beauty or luck, but through determination, intelligence, and resilience. Yet, even in the glow of success, Zainab remained humble. She understood that life's twists, both cruel and kind, had shaped her. She knew that one single kiss had started her journey, but it was her unwavering will, her refusal to succumb to fear or envy, that had carried her this far. And she also knew that more challenges awaited. Life, after all, was a constant balance of opportunity and risk, triumph and setback. Then came the moment that truly changed everything, a formal invitation from an international real estate investor, offering a partnership that could expand Zainab's operations across multiple African cities. Acceptance would mean relocating her family, taking even greater risks, and stepping fully into the role of a woman who had transcended her humble beginnings. Zainab looked at Ahmed, her mentor and partner, and he nodded in quiet support. Their hands met, a firm grasp that spoke volumes. She understood that her life, which had once seemed confined to market stalls and small dreams, was now poised for something monumental. In that instant, Zainab realized she had transformed completely, not just in wealth or status, but in spirit. The market girl who had sold fruit under the sun, who had counted coins with trembling fingers, who had faced whispers and judgment, had become a woman who commanded respect, influence, and admiration. One kiss had sparked the journey, but it was her courage, resilience, and intellect that had carried her to the mansion that awaited her, both literal and symbolic, a new life that she had earned with her own hands. The mansion stood like a monument to Zainab's journey. Its tall cream-colored walls gleamed under the Lagos sun, intricate wrought iron gates opening onto a pristine driveway. As she stepped out of the sleek black SUV with Ahmed by her side, she felt a sense of awe mixed with quiet triumph. Every tile, every polished surface, every carefully landscaped garden symbolized the years of struggle, the sweat of her hands in the market, and the courage it had taken to say yes to a life she had once only imagined. Inside, the mansion was vast but warm. High ceilings, chandeliers that glittered like captured stars, and windows that framed the sprawling city below created an air of opulence that most could only dream of. Yet Zainab walked through it with humility and grace. This was her home now, but it was also a reminder where she had come from. The dusty market alleys, the small room above her stall, the mornings counting coins and listening to the hum of the city waking up. Ahmed led her through the rooms, each more breathtaking than the last, and finally stopped at the veranda overlooking the landscape gardens. "This is yours," he said softly. "All of it." Tears pricked Zainab's eyes. I don't even know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's more than I ever dreamed of." Ahmed took her hand gently. "Zainab, you earned this, not because of me, but because of you. Your strength, your intelligence, your determination, it's all yours. I only helped you see what you already had inside." For a long moment, Zainab gazed out the gardens, the city beyond, and the life she now possessed. It was real. She had done it. She had transformed from a market girl into a woman of influence and wealth. But more than that, she had transformed in spirit. She was no longer bound by fear, judgment, or the limitations others had placed on her. She was free. Yet life, Zainab realized, was never only about triumph. It was also about giving back. Her thoughts immediately turned to her mother, her siblings, and the countless children and young women still struggling in markets and villages across Nigeria. She vowed that this mansion, this wealth, and her influence would not be a barrier to the world she came from. Instead, It would be a bridge, a symbol of hope and possibility. Weeks later, Zainab held a small gathering at the mansion. Not a lavish party with celebrities or politicians, but a warm celebration with family, close friends, and trusted colleagues. Her mother arrived, her eyes wide with disbelief and pride. Her siblings hugged Zainab tightly, some even crying at the sight of her transformation. "Zainab, my child," her mother whispered, holding her hands. "You've done what I never dared dream for myself. You've turned our lives around." Zainab smiled, tears falling silently down her cheeks. "It was never just me, Mama. It's all of us. Every struggle, every sacrifice, we did it together." The gathering was filled with laughter, stories, and quiet moments of reflection. Zainab spoke to the younger women present, sharing her journey from market stalls to the mansion, emphasizing that success came not from luck alone, but from perseverance, courage, and self-belief. She encouraged them to pursue their dreams relentlessly, to hold on to hope even when the world seemed against them. Even amidst the celebration, Zainab never forgot Ahmed. Their bond had evolved from mentorship and partnership into love built on respect, shared vision, and deep understanding. One evening, as they stood together on the veranda, looking out at the city lights, Ahmed turned to her. "Zainab, do you remember that first kiss?" he asked softly, his eyes reflecting the glow of the city below. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "How could I forget? That one moment changed everything." Ahmed took her hand, holding it firmly. "It did more than that. It started a journey that led to this life, yes, but it also led to us, to this partnership, to this love. I'm proud of you, Zainab, and I'm grateful I got to witness the woman you've become." Zainab leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a mix of joy, relief, and gratitude. All the trials, the envy, the whispers, and the sleepless nights had led her here. And in that moment, she understood that true wealth was not just in material possessions, but in love, integrity, and the ability to rise above hardship. Yet the story did not end with personal triumph. Zainab knew that her life's purpose was now intertwined with those she could uplift. She began initiatives to support women in markets, offering small loans, training programs, and mentorship. She expanded her business into multiple Nigerian cities, creating jobs and opportunities for those who, like her, had once been overlooked. One morning, as she walked through a bustling market in Lagos, seeing young women applying the lessons she had shared, Zainab felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She saw herself in them, the determination in their eyes, the pride in their work, the spark of dreams that had yet to be realized. She approached one of the young sellers, a girl no older than 16, who was struggling to balance her goods. "Here," Zainab said, handing her a small bundle of fruit she had purchased, along with a few notes for encouragement. "Keep going. Work hard, but believe in yourself. One day your life can change too." The girl looked up, eyes wide with surprise and hope. "Thank you, ma'am," she exclaimed. Zainab smiled, feeling a sense of purpose that no mansion, no wealth could ever fully contain. Her journey from market girl to mansion owner was complete, not just in material terms, but in heart, spirit, and influence. She had turned adversity into opportunity, and her life had become a beacon for others. And as the sun set over Lagos, casting golden light across the city and gardens of her home, Zainab stood on her veranda, hand in Ahmed's, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a single, transformative kiss. She understood that life was a series of moments, choices, and actions, and that one act of courage, one leap of faith, could indeed change everything. The market girl was gone, but a woman she had become, strong, wise, compassionate, and unyielding, would leave a mark on a world that no obstacle could erase.